The Loch Mey Monster. Now, before I tell you the story of the Loch Mey Monster, let me just tell you about an experience I had just before I wrote the book. I was walking quite close to the Loch Mey, and the mist was struggling it up as it does first thing in the morning. And in the mist, and out of the mist, came an old man. He came up to me and he said, "Hello, I'm 500 years old, I am. 500 years old. And I tell you, there's a monster in that loch. I've seen him, there's a monster." I looked at him and it sounded a little strange to me. He looked a little strange too, but I let him carry on. This is what he said to me. "Somewhere in the midst and the peat bogs of the lowlands beyond the highlands lurks a myth, a mystery, a legend, a story of an ancient animal, prehistoric some claim, a creature that flies alone, having lost its mate in the dim distant passage of time, an animal immortalized by the mysterious preserving qualities of the peat bogs themselves, as quiet as the slow rise of water in winter, as invisible as a grey cloud hanging over a translucent loch, yet as vast as a swarming flock of geese in autumn. It flies the path it's always flown. Some say it's still searching for its lost mate. Under cover of migrating geese, it sweeps in, unnoticed and unheard. Yet the familiar sounds, the large fluffy clouds, can they all be accounted for?" That did sound strange, I have to admit, and I turned to look at him because, well, I thought maybe I'd invite him round and we could discuss it more, but he disappeared into the mist. But here's the story, the Loch Mey Monster. Deep in the marshes, where there's nothing but a squelch, lived two young children, Greg and Abigail. They lived there with their mother and father, their baby brother, and an awful lot of animals. Their mother and father seemed to collect animals, or at least that's how it seemed to Greg. Greg was 6, although he liked to tell his friends he was almost 7. He loved chickens if he could chase them, pigs if he could ride them, and ducks as long as he could carry them around under his arm. More often than not, the pigs would chase him, the chickens would peck him, and the ducks would fly away. "Hi, Greg," said Abigail. "Oh, what do you want, fussy pants?" Greg answered. "Oh, nothing. I was just seeing what you were doing," said Abigail in her kindest voice. Abigail was 5, nearly 3 according to Greg. She loved horses, rabbits, and the colour pink. She carried food on her chin, a toy horse in each hand, and a fluffy pink blob in her long brown hair. "I know," announced Abigail. "Let's play a game. I'll be a horse and you can be a cow." "No, I'll be a pig, you can be a chicken, and I'll eat you," Greg said quickly. Okay." Greg roared the roar of a lion, which seemed to work better than a pig. Abigail ran for cover. Just as Greg reached to grab her, she collapsed to the floor and screamed as loud as she could. The scream was in fact very like the scream of a pig. "Greg! Abby!" shouted their dad. "Stop it now and just be nice to each other." And this sounded alien to Greg, who gave Abigail a wicked smile and sat on her. Abigail screamed a scream to wake the dead. Greg realised he would be dead if he didn't think fast as his dad came round the corner. "Abby tripped me over and I fell over and hurt myself," Greg said quickly. "No, I didn't." Right, you two, come here. You can just give each other a big, sloppy kiss. Oh, Greg was mortified. Of all the punishments he could endure, this was the worst. But I said, sorry. Sorry, Abby, Abby, sorry. Greg begged. Yes, sorry, Greg, Abigail spluttered. A big kiss, said their dad, and no licks, Greg. Greg looked down at his boots, then ahead at Abigail's face, and he shuffled forward, and as quick as he could, kissed Abigail's now smiling face. Greg's face slipped on a piece of yogurt that lingered on her chin. He said sorry again and quickly wiped his face with everything he could find. Abigail smiled even more and went to find her little Shetland pony, Binny. Good boy, good girl. Now try to be good. I've got a lot of ditch digging to do today. Ah, dear. Dad trudged away towards a large hole in the ground. Okay, Dad. Greg climbed over the fence to the pond and kicked a few stones in. And be careful near that pond, Greg. Okay, Dad, said Greg, feeling more and more annoyed. Greg amused himself, gathering feathers and throwing twigs towards the pond. After a while, he sat down on the bank and watched the ducks and geese hiss and splash and dive. He began to wonder where Abigail was. He was bored. Then he spotted her, handing some eggs to her mother. That's it, he thought. This is it. I'll just collect more eggs than Abigail. Quickly he ran to every duck house and goose nest, ignoring their flapping, quacking and squawking. He searched every area he knew chickens laid in. Finally, brimming with joy and eggs, he ran to his father. Look at these eggs! Look at them all! Oh, yes, well done, Greg, well done. Much more than Abby got. She doesn't know all the places like me. Oh, look at them all. Yes, well, thanks, Greg. You're both very good. Well done, yes. Could you just help me out? I've got another job for you. What? But I got more. I've got more than Abby. Yes, thanks. Very good boy. Now, I need you and Abby to take some hay out to the goats, please. I know what a strong boy you are. Now, come on. Oh. Greg folded his arms in frustration. This wasn't fair, he thought. I've got more eggs and now I've got a job. And I don't want to do it. But again, maybe it was a chance to prove he was better than Abigail. Okay, Dad, okay. So gathering hay and a bucket of water between them, they scrambled through the gates, leaving a trail of footprints, hay and bitter mutterings. Stop dropping all the hay, Abby. I'm not. You made my foot really well. I'm going to tell Mum of you. Stop getting me into trouble. You're always getting me into trouble, you are. No, I'm not. You are. I'm not. Ah, argued Greg. The goats quickly gathered that food was near and swarmed around Abigail and Greg, squashing them in a huddle of hooves, bodies and horns. Abigail sank into a puddle and squelched. Greg, after several attempts to protect himself with his boot, fished it out of a shallow ditch. Abigail, help me, my boot's come off, quick. Oh, hold my hand, I need to balance, quick. Abigail, covered in wet, sticky mud, without a fear or a fuss, quickly went to help Greg. Oh, thanks, Abby. Oh, that's okay. I'll tell you what, you can use my binoculars if you like, said Greg. Greg pulled a small pair of black binoculars from his pocket and handed them to Abigail. Let's go and have a look for swans on the loch. I bet I see one first. Oh, okay. They hopped over the fence to the spongy field, their feet now nestling in the delicate yellow grass. This is great, said Abigail. I can see the whole world with these binoculars. Binoculars, Abby, and no, you can't, because Australia is underground, said Greg. They splashed and jumped and ran through small puddles and ponds, looked in old rabbit holes and got scratched by lethal gorse bushes. That smells like coconut. I really like coconut, Abby.
Ow! I don't like it at all. Ow! Oh, I hate it! I hate it!
Oh, look, Abby, a swan. I saw it first as well. Look, I love swans, Abby. Oh. Greg looked adoringly at the swans, not noticing Abby's plight. Abby, with rosy cheeks and tearful eyes, looked up at Greg.
Oh, yes, Greg, but I've hurt my leg.
Come on, Abby, let's go and see it better. Come on. Abby, annoyed, stomped after Greg. Her legs were now being whipped by the unmovable reeds. As Greg got close to the bank, the swan glided away across the water. Greg watched sadly as it moved away, but he was pleased he got so close. Ah, look, Abby, it's going.
I know. Maybe it likes all those geese,
said Abby. On the far side of the loch, huge numbers of geese honked and barked to each other. Hey, up above the loch, more and more came into the land. Hey, look. Look, Abby, there's loads, 100 or more. Hey, they look like a huge dragon. It's a dragon! The noise became deafening. Then Abigail clasped her ears with her hands.
It's too loud! It's too loud!
Her eyes were now tightly shut too. Hey, that really does look like a huge dragon, Greg shouted. Hey, look at that flock. Hey, even close up. It is a dragon. Oh, it's a dragon, Abby!
What? Oh, no!
I'm only joking. It's just geese, Abby.
That's not funny.
It's not funny at all. Abby stamped her feet and threw her arms up and down. It's a joke, Abby. It's just a joke. Huh. Okay. For a while, they stood silently watching the newly arrived geese. Greg found half a feathered skeleton of a duck and wondered how it got there. Abigail began to notice a thin mist creep longingly towards them from the whispering sea beyond the horizon. Look, Greg, fog, Abigail whispered, loudly enough to drown out the sound of the sea. Yeah, I saw it already. Come on, let's go back home now. Just as Greg looked at Abigail, something else seemed to catch his eye. Something that seemed to move with the mist, but lumbered more than crept. Something that looked like a very large goose, and yet did not. The strange something wobbled and sort of floated like a dark grey cloud. Wisps of mist seemed to roll off its large body and splash lingeringly into the cool, murky water. Abby, there is a monster. It's right there. Look! Greg pointed at the menacing monster, hoping it didn't notice his sudden arm movement. Abby, look, it's there. Look, Abby. Abby! You're only joking. I know. No, Abby, I'm not. It's there. It's there. Just look. Greg closed his eyes in the slimmer hope it would leave. He was struggling. It was like some sort of a creepy dream. Maybe if he shook his head hard enough, he would wake from it. But this didn't seem to help at all. It just made Greg feel horribly dizzy. Abigail, beginning to realise this might be serious, grabbed Greg, who, still feeling slightly dizzy, was bundled over into a pile of reeds. Ow, Abby! What are you doing? Oh, stop trying to kiss me again. Ah, yuck. Now I'm wet and muddy and my knee hurts and it's your fault. Abby sat, legs crossed, eyes shut and fingers in her ears. I'm not listening to you, Greg. I'm not. But Greg was now so annoyed he'd almost forgotten the strange creature behind him. It lurked leeringly on the edge of the loch and hissed. And you can go away too, monster. I'm not your friend, so leave me alone. Two large sunken eyes looked suspiciously at Greg. Then the rest of the body sunk too, away into the loch once more. Greg stared into the mist. He suddenly noticed there were fewer geese around. Or was that fewer monsters? He wasn't sure.
Can I open my eyes yet, Greg?
Well, I suppose you can if you want to.
Sorry about your clothes, Greg.
Listen, I did just see a monster, Abby.
No, you didn't, Greg. It's just sheep in the mist.
Yes, I did.
You didn't.
I did.
Oh, no, you didn't. You didn't, Greg.
I did too.
Abby, Greg.
From a ditch not too far away, they heard their dad calling them. They hurried back through the tall brown tip reeds and squelchy moss-covered peat, back to where their dad was struggling with some very large red spaghetti. Greg soon realised this was the soaking root mass of a large reed. Listen, your mum wants you to help her weed the herb garden. Off you go.
Oh, Dad, come on. Quick, and pick some kale, please, for the geese on the way there. Thanks. Well done, my little babies. We're not babies, we're children.
But their voices were lost. Their dad continued to wrestle with the base of another very large gorse bush. It was some days later when Abby and Greg were reminded of their experience at the loch. Greg was creeping up on a lapwing he'd seen on the heather beyond the goat field. As he crawled along on the uneven broken peat and clay, he noticed something glinting. It was glinting very close to the loch. Suddenly, just in front of him, a lapwing screamed into the air and startled and dived and swooped around Greg. It just missed him again and again it dived. Greg thought this was a good time to run as fast as he could. He ran faster and faster and still it dived. Finally, he ran very, very fast towards the glinting. Finally, the lapwing stopped. But he'd lost sight of that strange glinting. Where was it? Greg climbed over the fence at the end of the field, the one that was attached to the land by the loch. Then a voice from beside him filled him with dread and made him fall headlong from the fence.
Hi, Greg!
Oh, hello, Abby. What do you want? Greg said, spitting the mud from his mouth and trying to look unsurprised.
Why are you all muddy, Greg?
Oh, I'm putting it on my skin, and Mum says it's good for you. It makes you look better or something.
Really?
Said Abby, grabbing a handful and smothering it on her face. The sickly mud mixed with some tomato seeds on Abigail's chin and now resembled some grisly-looking frog spawn. So what are you doing here, Abby?
Oh, I found this frog spawn,
she answered, pouring a sloppy mass into a large glass jar. Hey, great, said Greg, gathering a large handful and drawling it into the air and into a little glass jar. They looked at the now full jar and wondered how they could carry it back to their house without spilling it. Maybe we could hide it here somewhere, Greg said.
Yeah, okay,
said Abby, goggling. Greg selected a suitable clump of moss and placed the jar carefully amongst the tallest blades of grass that surrounded it. I'll get a bucket later and put all the frog spawn in it. It'll be great. I love frog spawn. Look, Abby, do you see that brownie-looking bird over there?
Oh, yes, it's a darling.
No, it's not a darling. A starling, but it isn't a starling either. Abby, it's a woodcock. They're quite rare. No, it's not a wooden chicken, Greg. Oh, no, Abby, it's a bird. Oh, come on, before we see that monster again. Abby stopped, as if to disagree with Greg. Then she looked out towards the loch.
I've seen it. It eats geese,
Abby said airily.
No, you didn't. I did too. You didn't. I did times 100. You didn't times 1,000,000, plus everything, Greg finished.
I did anyway.
Well, where is it now, then?
Asked Greg. As if the monster had heard every last word, it suddenly raised its head above the reeds and sneered at Greg and Abigail.
We'd better go. Let's go!
Shouted Greg. But Abby was already moving towards the monster, clutching the jar of frog spawn.
I wonder if she wants to eat these,
Abby gagged, as she moved towards the monster. The monster watched her closely as she approached, looking stunned and faintly amused.
Abby! Abby! Abby, come back!
But Abby didn't turn back. She kept going. Closer and closer she went. But as the huge monster loomed above her, she didn't notice the small ditch below her feet. She fell straight in, scattering the duckweed from the surface and wallowing in the icy, muddy water. By this time, Greg was running towards Abigail and the monster, ready to do battle, when suddenly, as quick as a peck, the unbelievably slick neck of the monster snapped, flicked, and threw Abby straight out of the ditch into Greg's arms. Actually, Greg was squashed, but he didn't mind.
You saved her,
Greg exclaimed.
You saved her!
He looked in awe at the monster. The monster took one more amused look at the tangled bodies of Abigail and Greg and swept away into the air. Silently, smoothly, and elegantly it moved, disappearing into a towering white cloud, and as it left, the geese seemed to follow very noisily behind.
Wow! Hey, wow!
They said together.
Hey, Abby, come on, get off me now. You're all wet.
Oh, yuck. I bet Dad'll tell you off for getting me wet. And look at you, you're really wet too.
He will not, he will too.
Abby's face became redder and redder, and finally she began to sob.
Oh, sorry, Abby. It's okay. I'm wet too. It'll be fine.
We'll say the goats pushed us in the mud.
Okay, Greg. Should we tell them about the monster?
I don't think so. They won't believe us. Or they might tell their friends, and then everyone will know.
She's our monster, isn't she, Greg?
Yes, Abby, but are you sure it eats geese? Abby poured the frog spawn back into the ditch.
Maybe it eats frogs and geese, she said.
Maybe. Poor frogs. Maybe just weeds and fish. With this happier thought in mind, they turned back home and heard their mum shouting to them.
Greg! Abby! Come and help me clean the chickens out, please. Come on!